Captain Ben Murphy's team cut through the Vakreth ship's hull with precise efficiency. They had practiced this kind of boarding hundreds of times, but today felt different. Today they were not just soldiers. They were rescuers. They were bringing children home. Murphy led his team through the breach and into the ship's corridors. The Vakreth crew did not resist. They stood with their hands raised, weapons on the ground. They looked terrified. Murphy's team moved past them quickly. Their sensors had tracked the emergency beacon to a storage area on the lower deck. That was where the children were. Murphy ran, his boots pounding on the metal floor. His team followed close behind. They reached the storage room. The door was barricaded from inside. Murphy knocked hard. "Human military," he called out. "Are there children in there?" A moment of silence. Then a young voice answered. "This is Jake Peterson. We have all 23 kids here. We are okay." "How do we know you are really human?" Murphy smiled under his helmet. "Smart kid." He pulled off his helmet so they could see his face through a gap in the barricade. "I am Captain Ben Murphy from Earth. Your parents sent us. We are taking you home." The barricade started moving. Containers scraped across the floor. The door opened and Murphy saw the children. They were dirty and tired. Some had bruises. A few were crying. But they were alive and mostly unharmed. Jake Peterson stood at the front holding a makeshift weapon he had fashioned from alien materials. He looked at Murphy and saluted like a soldier. "All 23 accounted for, sir. We are ready to go home." Murphy felt his throat tighten with emotion. He saluted back. His team quickly checked each child for injuries. Emma Collins had a cut on her arm, but nothing serious. Sophie Martinez was dehydrated but stable. All the others were in similar condition, scared and exhausted but alive. Murphy activated his radio. "Admiral, this is Murphy. We have them. All 23 children are safe. I repeat, all children are safe and coming home." On the bridge of the Victory, Admiral Henderson closed his eyes and let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for days. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered. "Send the all-clear signal to the fleet." Mission accomplished. Around him, the bridge crew cheered. Some cried. Henderson just smiled. The children were safe. That was all that mattered. The children were brought aboard the Victory in small groups. Medical teams checked them immediately. They were given food and water and clean clothes. Murphy stayed with them the whole time, making sure they felt safe. Jake Peterson asked him questions about the rescue. "How many ships came? How did you find us?" Murphy answered each question patiently. Emma Collins asked the question they all wanted to know. "When can we see our parents?" Murphy smiled. "Very soon. We are taking you back to New Haven right now. Your families are waiting for you." Emma started crying again, but this time they were happy tears. Sophie Martinez hugged Emma, and they both laughed through their tears. Commander Zelkoth was taken into custody by the human military police. He did not resist. He knew he was lucky to be alive. His crew was released after questioning. The humans kept their word. They used minimal force. Nobody was killed. Henderson could have destroyed the Vakreth ship and everyone on it. Instead, he showed mercy. But Zelkoth knew he would face justice. His own people would make sure of that. The human fleet withdrew from Vakreth space immediately after securing the children. They did not occupy any territory. They did not demand tribute or reparations beyond returning Zelkoth for trial. They simply took their children and left. The Vakreth government breathed a collective sigh of relief. They had escaped total destruction by surrendering in time. News of the rescue spread across the galaxy in hours. Every species heard the story. The humans had mobilized their entire fleet for 23 individuals. They had threatened to go to war. And when they got their children back safely, they simply left. No revenge, no occupation. They took what was theirs and went home. It was not what most species expected. On New Haven Colony, the parents waited at the landing field. Greg Peterson stood with his wife holding her hand tight. Linda Collins could not stop crying. Christine Howard had organized everything, making sure there was food and medical support ready. The whole colony had come out to welcome the children home. The transport ship landed and the door opened. Jake Peterson was the first one off. He saw his parents and ran. Greg caught him in a hug that lifted him off the ground. Jake's mother joined them and they held each other without speaking. Words were not needed. Emma Collins found her mother, Linda, and they collapsed into each other's arms. Sophie Martinez was picked up by both her parents at once and they did not let go. One by one, every child found their family. There were tears and laughter and fierce embraces. Captain Murphy watched from the ship and felt satisfaction deep in his soul. This was why he served. This was why humanity had built a military. Not to conquer or dominate, but to protect, to bring their people home safe. General Thrackan called an emergency session of the Galactic Defense Coalition the next day. Representatives from 50 species attended in person or by hologram. Thrackan stood before them and spoke clearly. What we witnessed must never happen again. Human children are to be considered completely off limits under all circumstances. Any species that harms a human child will receive no protection from this coalition. There was no debate. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed. They had seen what humans were willing to do. They had seen the fleet mobilize. They had watched as humanity prepared to burn Vakreth space to ashes. Nobody wanted to face that themselves. The law was passed immediately and entered into the galactic records as the most strongly worded protection in coalition history. Ambassador Julie Carson addressed the coalition after the vote. She thanked them for their support and wisdom. Then she spoke words that would be remembered for generations. Humanity wants peace with all species. We want trade and friendship and cooperation. But understand this clearly. We are a protective species. Our children are precious to us beyond measure. We will go to any length to keep them safe. This is not a threat. This is simply who we are. The Krell ambassador spoke next. His species had observed humanity closely. Let me add something, he said. What makes humans dangerous is not their weapons or their numbers. It is their willingness to accept any cost when their young are threatened. Most species calculate risk versus reward. Humans do not. They simply act. Remember this and act accordingly. Commander Zelkoth was tried by a Vakreth court. He was found guilty of crimes against the Vakreth people for starting an unnecessary conflict. The sentence was death. The humans did not object. They had made it clear that Vakreth justice was acceptable. Zelkoth accepted his fate without complaint. In his final statement, he warned other species to learn from his mistake. Never take human children. The price is too high. Months passed. Life on New Haven returned to normal. The children went back to school. Jake Peterson was considered a hero for leading the escape attempt. Emma Collins received an award for her bravery. Sophie Martinez was praised for her intelligence and courage. But they were all just happy to be home with their families. The story became part of galactic culture. Parents throughout space used it to teach their children about respecting others. The phrase "be careful or the humans will come" became common. It was said half-jokingly, but everyone understood the truth behind it. Humans were protective. Humans were fierce. And humans never abandoned their young. Admiral Henderson retired a year later with full honors. President Mitchell served another term and was remembered as the leader who proved humanity's strength, without firing a shot in anger. Captain Murphy continued his military service and trained other rescue teams. The children grew up and many of them joined the military themselves, wanting to protect others the way they had been protected. General Thrackan wrote a book about the incident. It became required reading in military academies across the galaxy. The central lesson was simple. Never underestimate a species that values its children above all else. Such species are capable of both great mercy and terrible violence. The key is understanding which one you will face. Years later, Jake Peterson joined Earth's diplomatic corps. He wanted to build bridges between species, but he never forgot what happened. He carried a small reminder, the makeshift knife Emma had made on the Vakreth ship. It sat on his desk as a symbol. Humans could be kind and generous, but they could also be warriors when necessary, especially when their children needed them. The galaxy changed after the New Haven incident. Slavery declined dramatically. Raiders became more careful about their targets. The protection of young became a universal value, not just a human one. Other species began to understand that caring for children was not weakness. It was the ultimate strength. It was what made a civilization worth preserving. And humanity took its place among the great powers of the galaxy, not because they had the biggest fleet or the most advanced weapons, but because they had shown something more important. They had shown that they would do whatever was necessary to protect their own. That made them allies worth having and enemies worth avoiding. The galaxy learned its lesson well. Human children were off limits forever. The morning sun rose over New Haven just like any other day. The colony world sat on the edge of human space, quiet and peaceful. 5,000 people called this place home. They had farms and schools and small houses with gardens. Children played in the streets while their parents worked. Nobody expected what would happen next. Jake Peterson was 12 years old and supposed to be in school. Instead, he was climbing the big oak tree near the colony center. He wanted to see how far he could see from the top branches. His mother would be angry if she found out, but Jake figured what she did not know would not hurt her. He pulled himself up branch by branch, his hands rough from helping his father with farm work. From his high perch, Jake could see most of the colony. The school building stood 3 blocks away. The medical center was next to it. Beyond that were the farms that fed everyone. Everything looked normal and safe. Then Jake saw something that made his stomach drop. Ships were coming down from the sky. Not human ships. These were dark and had strange shapes. They moved fast and silent. Jake climbed down as fast as he could. His feet hit the ground running. He had to warn everyone. But before he could reach the school, the ships landed. Doors opened and creatures came out. They were tall and thin with gray skin and too many fingers. Their eyes were black and cold. Jake ducked behind a building and watched. Commander Zelkoth stepped off his ship and looked at the human settlement. He felt pleased with himself. This would be an easy raid. The humans were new to the galaxy. They had weak defenses and no real military. His soldiers would take what they wanted and leave before anyone could stop them. The Vakreth had done this hundreds of times before on dozens of worlds. The colony defenders tried to fight back. Christine Howard, the colony administrator, activated the defensive shields. Old guns rose from hidden positions and fired at the ships. The weapons were outdated, bought cheap from traders who passed through. The shots bounced off the Vakreth shields like rain on glass. Christine cursed and reached for the emergency transmitter. She had to get a message out before it was too late. Zelkoth ordered his soldiers forward. "Take the small ones," he said. "They are easier to control and train." His troops moved through the colony with practiced efficiency. They had done this before. They knew exactly what to do. Parents fought to protect their children, but the Vakreth had weapons that put people to sleep. One by one, mothers and fathers fell to the ground, unable to move or speak. Emma Collins was 9 years old and playing with her friends when the aliens came. She saw her mother Linda fall to the ground after a strange light hit her. Emma wanted to scream, but her friend Kate grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the school. "Run," Kate said. "We have to hide." But it was too late. The Vakreth soldiers surrounded them. Emma felt something hit her arm, and then the world went fuzzy. She could not move her legs. Strong hands picked her up and carried her away. Sophie Martinez was only 7. She was in her classroom learning math when the teacher heard the noise outside. Mrs. Allen looked out the window and her face went white. She told all the children to hide under their desks. Sophie crawled under hers and held her breath. She heard the door break open. Heavy footsteps came into the room. The teacher tried to stop them, but there was a flash of light and she stopped moving. Sophie felt hands grab her legs and pull her out from under the desk. She kicked and screamed, but it did not help. Jake Peterson had managed to avoid capture by hiding in a storage shed. He watched through a crack in the wall as the aliens gathered children from all over the colony. He counted them, 23 kids in total. Some were crying. Others looked scared but stayed quiet. The aliens were putting them on the ships. Jake's hands shook with anger. He was just a kid. What could he do against armed aliens? But he had to do something. He remembered the emergency beacon his father had shown him once. Every colonist had one in case of danger. Jake ran back to his house, staying low and quiet. His parents were both on the ground, alive but unable to move. His mother's eyes followed him as he entered. Jake found the beacon in the emergency kit. He activated it and hid it in his pocket. If the aliens took him too, maybe someone could track the signal. Then he ran back outside. One of the Vakreth soldiers spotted him. The alien raised his weapon. Jake did not run. Instead, he walked toward the ship where they were loading the other children. "Take me too," he shouted. "I want to go with them." The soldier looked confused but grabbed Jake and threw him with the others. Jake landed hard, but he had the beacon. That was what mattered. Inside the ship, the children were put in a large holding area. The walls were metal and cold. There were no windows. Emma Collins found Sophie Martinez crying in a corner and sat next to her. "It will be okay," Emma said, though she did not believe it herself. Jake Peterson moved through the group, checking on everyone. He was the oldest. He felt responsible somehow. Commander Zelkoth watched his soldiers finish loading the captives. This had been easier than expected. The humans had barely fought back. They would sell these small ones to the mining corporations. Children could fit in tight spaces that adults could not.
They would be valuable.
Zelkoth ordered his ships to lift off. Within minutes, they were climbing toward space. Down on the ground, the effects of the sleep weapons wore off. Greg Peterson woke up first. He jumped to his feet and looked around wildly. Where was Jake? Where were all the children? Other parents were waking up too. Linda Collins screamed when she realized Emma was gone. Christine Howard stumbled to the communications center. The aliens had damaged it, but she managed to get one system working. She sent out distress signals on every frequency she could find. Emergency codes went to Earth, to the nearest human military base, to every ship in range. The message was simple but devastating. New Haven colony under attack. 23 children taken by unknown aliens. Request immediate assistance. She sent the message again and again, her hands shaking as she typed. The parents gathered in the colony center. Some were crying. Others looked angry. Greg Peterson stood up and spoke in a voice that did not shake. "We need to stay calm," he said. "We need to be ready. Earth will respond. They will come for our children. Until then, we prepare." Other parents nodded. They began gathering weapons and supplies. They did not know what else to do. What the Vakreth did not know was that they had just started something terrible. They thought they had raided a weak colony and taken easy prizes. They thought the humans would accept their loss and move on like every other species did. They were wrong. Humans were different, and the galaxy was about to learn exactly how different they were. Above New Haven, the Vakreth ships jumped into hyperspace. Commander Zelkoth felt satisfied with the day's work. In the holding area, Jake Peterson was already studying the walls and doors. He was looking for weaknesses, for ways to escape. Emma Collins was quietly talking to the younger children, keeping them calm. Sophie Martinez had stopped crying and was watching the adults through the gaps in the door. The children did not know it yet, but they were about to show the galaxy what human children were made of. The distress signal from New Haven raced across space at the speed of light. It would reach Earth in hours. It would reach the nearest human military base even sooner. And when it did, everything would change. The Vakreth had made the worst mistake in their species' history. They had taken human children, and humanity would never forgive that. General Thraken had seen many battles in his long career. He was a veteran of 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. His office at Galactic Station Meridian overlooked the central hub of the station, where ships from 100 different species came and went. He was reading routine reports when his assistant brought him the file about New Haven. "Another Vakreth raid," the assistant said. "Small human colony on the frontier." Thraken barely looked up. The Vakreth raided someone almost every week.
It was what they did.
They were slavers and thieves, but they were careful. They only hit targets that could not fight back. They never took enough to start a real war. It was annoying, but not worth the Coalition's time to stop them. "File it with the others," Thraken said. The assistant nodded and left. The general went back to his work. He had more important things to worry about. A trade dispute between 2 major powers was threatening to turn violent. That needed his attention. The Vakreth raid was just another line in a very long list of problems. 3 hours later, his assistant rushed back in. "The human ambassador is here," she said. "She demands to see you immediately." Thraken frowned. The humans were new to galactic politics. They did not usually make demands. He told his assistant to send the ambassador in. He expected protests and complaints. What he got was much worse. Ambassador Julie Carson walked into the office like she owned it. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She carried a data pad and her hands were steady. "General Thraken," she said without greeting, "the Vakreth have taken 23 children from our colony on New Haven. We are giving them 72 hours to return the children unharmed. After that, there will be consequences." Thraken almost laughed. Consequences? The humans had been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. They had a small fleet and limited resources. What consequences could they possibly deliver? "Ambassador," he said carefully, "I understand you are upset, but the Vakreth are beyond our jurisdiction. The Coalition cannot force them to return captives. Perhaps you could negotiate a ransom." Carson placed her data pad on his desk. "You do not understand," she said quietly. You need to understand before it is too late. She activated the pad and images appeared in the air above it. These are from Earth's history, she said. This is what happens when humans feel their children are threatened. Thraken looked at the images. They showed cities burning, armies marching, weapons that could destroy entire continents. He saw numbers that made no sense. Millions dead. Decades of war. All of this over children? He looked at Carson. Surely these are exaggerations, he said. No species would sacrifice so much for so few. Every word is documented fact, Carson said. She pulled up more files. During our world wars, entire nations mobilized to fight. We were willing to use weapons that would destroy our own planet rather than surrender. We created bombs that could end all life on Earth, and we were ready to use them. All of our war doctrines, every single one, have a clause that says all rules are suspended if children are harmed. Thraken felt cold. He had studied many species. Most evolved with survival instincts that made sense. They calculated risks. They retreated when outmatched. They negotiated when possible. They understood that some losses were acceptable. But humans? Humans seem to have a different kind of thinking entirely. We are pursuit predators, Carson continued. Do you know what that means? It means our ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We did not give up. We did not stop. We just kept coming. And when it comes to our children, that instinct is 1,000 times stronger. We will chase the Vakrith to the end of the galaxy if we have to. We will spend every resource. We will sacrifice everything. And we will not stop until our children are back. This is madness, Thraken said. 23 individuals are not worth destroying yourselves over. Carson looked at him with something like pity. That is why you will never understand us, she said. To you it is a calculation. To us it is not. Those are our children. Our young. Every human on Earth and every colony will support whatever action our government takes. There will be no debate, no disagreement. We are all united on this. Thraken tried to contact Commander Zelkoth. The Vakrith ships had jumped to hyperspace hours ago. Their destination was unknown. The general sent emergency messages on all frequencies, trying to warn Zelkoth that he needed to turn around. But space was big and communications were slow. He might not reach the Vakrith commander in time. Carson stood to leave. 69 hours remaining, she said. I suggest you use that time to evacuate any species near Vakrith space. When we come, there will be collateral damage. We will try to avoid it, but our priority is getting our children back. Nothing else matters. She walked out without waiting for a response. Thraken sat in silence for a long time. Then he began making calls. He contacted every major species with territory near the Vakrith. He told them to pull back their ships and civilians. Some asked why. He sent them the data Carson had given him. Within an hour, ships were evacuating border regions. Nobody wanted to be near humans when they went to war. On Earth, President Laura Mitchell stood in the command center deep below the Capitol. Around her, military leaders worked at computer stations. Admiral Kyle Henderson approached with a data pad. All ships are responding, he said. The entire fleet is mobilizing. We have 347 vessels ready for combat. Another 200 will be ready within 24 hours. Mitchell nodded. What about the special weapons? Henderson's face was grim. Ready for deployment if needed. We have authorization codes prepared. Mitchell did not like thinking about those weapons. They were designed for a war humanity hoped would never come. But if the Vakrith did not return the children, she would use every weapon at her disposal. Prepare the broadcast, Mitchell said. The whole galaxy needs to hear this. Technicians set up cameras and transmission equipment. Mitchell sat at a desk and faced the camera. She did not wear a military uniform. She wore a simple suit. She wanted to look like what she was, a leader speaking for her people. When the cameras started recording, Mitchell spoke in a calm, clear voice. To the Vakrith and all species of the galactic community, 23 human children have been taken from New Haven Colony. We are giving the Vakrith 60 hours to return them unharmed. If they do not, we will consider it an act of war. We will respond with every resource at our command. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The broadcast went out on every frequency humans could access. It was translated into hundreds of languages. Within minutes, every species in the galaxy heard it. Most expected anger or threats of violence. Instead, they heard something much more frightening. They heard absolute certainty. The human president spoke like someone describing the sunrise, stating a simple fact that could not be changed. Intelligence services across the galaxy began digging into human military capabilities. What they found shocked them. The humans had been building weapons in secret. Not just ships and guns, but weapons that could crack planets. Weapons that used gravity itself as a force. Weapons that could make stars unstable. And the humans had been mapping Vakreth space in detail for years, knowing exactly where every installation was. Aboard his ship, Commander Zelkoth finally received messages from home. His superiors were panicking. Human warships had appeared in every Vakreth system simultaneously. They were not attacking. They were just waiting, sitting in perfect formation around every planet, every station, every colony. The message was clear. Humanity knew where everything was, and they were ready to strike. Zelkoth felt fear for the first time. He had thought this was a simple raid. Take some primitives, sell them, make a profit. Nobody would care. Nobody would respond. But the humans were responding. And from what his superiors were telling him, they were responding with overwhelming force. In the holding area of his ship, the human children were quiet. Jake Peterson sat against the wall thinking. Emma Collins was comforting Sophie Martinez and the other young ones. They did not know exactly what was happening, but they could tell something had changed. The Vakreth guards looked nervous now. They whispered to each other in their language. Something was wrong, and even the children could sense it. Jake closed his eyes and thought about his parents, about his home. He thought about Earth, which he had never seen but heard about in stories. Somewhere out there, people were coming for them. He just had to keep everyone alive until help arrived. He opened his eyes and looked at the other children. "We are going to be okay," he said quietly. "They are coming for us." Emma looked at him and nodded. She believed him. The galaxy held its breath and waited. 60 hours was not much time. Everyone wondered if the Vakreth would surrender the children or if humanity would really go to war over 23 individuals. Most species thought the humans were bluffing. They would calculate the cost and back down. But a few species, the older ones who had studied humanity closely, knew better. They evacuated their people and prepared for what was coming, because they understood something the others did not. Humans did not bluff when it came to their children. Admiral Kyle Henderson stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Victory and watched the fleet assemble. Ships appeared from every direction, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Destroyers and cruisers and carriers, each one painted with the blue and white colors of Earth's military. He had never seen so many ships in one place before. The entire human fleet was gathering for war. Captain Rita Garcia approached him with a data pad. "All stations report ready," she said. "We have 512 combat vessels, another 100 support ships, 14,000 Marines ready for boarding actions." Henderson nodded. He had commanded fleets before, but never one this large. Never one with such a single purpose. Get our children back. That was the entire mission. Nothing else mattered. "Open a channel to all ships," Henderson ordered. The communications officer nodded and activated the system. Every captain and crew member in the fleet could hear him now. "This is Admiral Henderson. You all know why we are here. 23 children were taken from New Haven. Our children, human children. We are going to bring them home. I do not care how far we have to go or what we have to do. We will not stop until they are safe." He paused and looked out at the fleet. "Some of you have children of your own. Some of you were children once who needed protection. Every human understands what this means. We protect our young always, no matter the cost. The Vakreth will learn this lesson. The entire galaxy will learn this lesson." Henderson out. On Earth, in the capital city, people gathered in the streets. They watched the news broadcasts showing the fleet. They saw the ships moving into position. There were no protests, no calls for peace negotiations, no debates about whether this was worth it. The entire planet was united in a way it had not been in generations. Every human, regardless of where they lived or what they believed, agreed on one thing. The children had to come home. Factories that made civilian goods switched to military production. Shipyards worked around the clock building more vessels. Scientists who had been working on peaceful projects turned their attention to weapons. The human economy transformed overnight into a war machine. Nobody complained about the cost. Nobody asked if it was necessary. They just worked. Back on the Vakreth ship, Jake Peterson was making plans. He had been watching the guards for hours, counting how many there were and when they changed shifts. He noticed patterns. The guards got lazy after the 4th hour. They talked to each other instead of watching the doors. They thought the children were helpless. That was their mistake. Jake gathered the older children together. Emma Collins, who was 9 but smart. Danny Price, who was 11 and strong. Lucy White, who was 10 and fast. Kate Murphy, who was 8 but brave. "We need to be ready," Jake told them quietly. "Help is coming, but we might need to help ourselves first." The other children looked scared, but they nodded. Emma had found something useful. When the guards brought them food, she noticed they used metal containers. Emma had been secretly bending pieces of metal from the containers, making them into tools. She showed Jake a piece that was almost like a knife. It was not much, but it was something. Jake took it and tested the edge. It could cut through plastic cables. Maybe more. Sophie Martinez, the youngest at 7, surprised everyone. She had been watching the control panels outside their cell. She had a good memory, and she told Jake which buttons the guards pushed to open the door. Jake memorized the pattern. If they could get out of the cell, they had a chance. He did not know what they would do after that, but it was a start. Commander Zelkoth sat in his command chair and read the messages from his government. They were telling him to turn around, to return the human children immediately. The Vikrith High Council was terrified. Human ships were sitting outside their worlds, waiting. The humans had not attacked yet, but everyone knew they would if the children were not returned. Zelkoth wanted to comply. He wanted to give the humans what they wanted and end this nightmare, but there was a problem. He was 3 days from the nearest jump point that would take him back toward human space. Even if he turned around now, it would take almost a week to get the children home. The human deadline was only 2 more days away. He could not make it in time. He sent a message to the humans explaining this. He promised to return the children. He begged for more time. The response came back within an hour. It was short and cold. "You have 40 hours. Make it work." Zelkoth stared at the message. How could he make it work? Space did not bend to his wishes. The laws of physics did not care about his deadline. General Thraken received intelligence reports that made his head hurt. Human ships were doing something unprecedented. They were burning their fuel at rates that would leave them stranded. They were pushing their engines beyond safe limits. They were taking risks that no sane military would take, all to reach Vakreth space faster. The humans were not bluffing. They were coming, and nothing would stop them. The Galactic Defense Coalition held an emergency meeting. Representatives from 30 species gathered to discuss the crisis. Most wanted to stay neutral. A few suggested offering to mediate. The ambassador from the Krell, an ancient species that had been spacefaring for 10,000 years, spoke last. "I have studied humans," the Krell ambassador said. "They are new to space, but they are old as a species. They survived on a death world where everything wanted to kill them. They evolved as pack hunters who never gave up. They created weapons that could destroy their own planet and almost used them. They are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered, not because they are the strongest, but because they do not know when to quit." The room fell silent. "Then what do we do?" someone asked. The Krell ambassador's response was simple. "We stay out of their way. We let them get their children back. And we never ever threaten human children again. If we do, they will burn the galaxy down to protect them. I have seen their history. I have read their literature. Every human culture across their entire world values children above all else. This is not a political stance. This is biology. This is instinct." Back on Zelkoth's ship, the escape attempt began. Jake Peterson had picked the moment carefully. The guards had just changed shifts. The new guards were tired and distracted. Jake signaled to Emma. She started crying loudly, calling for help. One of the guards came to the cell door to see what was wrong. When he leaned close, Jake pushed Emma's makeshift knife through the gap and cut the control cable. The door sparked and then slid open. The guard reached for his weapon, but Danny Price tackled him. The alien was bigger and stronger, but Danny had surprise on his side. Lucy White grabbed the guard's weapon and threw it to Jake. The other children poured out of the cell. Some were scared. Others were angry. All of them were ready to fight. Alarms started blaring throughout the ship. More guards came running. Jake fired the alien weapon, not really knowing how to use it properly. The shot went wide, but it made the guards take cover. The children ran down the corridor. They had no plan beyond getting away from the cell. They did not know where they were going. They just knew they had to move. They found a storage room and barricaded themselves inside. Jake counted heads. All 23 children were there. Nobody was hurt. He felt a surge of pride. They were just kids, but they had escaped. They had fought back. Now they just had to survive until help arrived. And help was coming. Jake was sure of it. Commander Zelkoth ran to the security station. His prisoners had escaped. Human children had overpowered his guards and were loose on his ship. How was that possible? They were just children, small and weak. But the security footage showed something different. It showed children working together like trained soldiers. It showed them using tools and weapons they had never seen before. It showed them thinking and planning and fighting. For the first time, Zelkoth began to understand. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were survivors. And even their children had that survival instinct. He had made a terrible mistake. He had not just taken captives. He had taken the young of the most dangerous predator species in the galaxy, and now their parents were coming for them. Admiral Henderson received a signal. It was faint, but it was there. One of the children had activated an emergency beacon. The fleet now had a target. Henderson smiled for the first time in days. Found them, he said. All ships maximum speed. We are bringing our children home. The human fleet turned as one and accelerated toward the signal. Nothing would stop them now. The hunt was over. Now came the rescue. 24 hours remained before the human deadline expired. Commander Zelkoth sat in his command chair and watched the countdown timer on his screen. Every second that passed brought him closer to disaster. His ship was moving as fast as it could toward the nearest human outpost, but it was not fast enough. He would miss the deadline by at least 2 days. Messages flooded in from the Vakreth homeworld. His government was desperate. Human warships surrounded every Vakreth planet and station. They had not fired yet, but their weapons were armed and ready. Millions of Vakreth civilians were evacuating to underground shelters. The entire species was preparing for war because of what Zelkoth had done. The High Council sent him a final message. Do whatever you must. Damage your ship if needed. Burn all your fuel. Just get those children to human space before the deadline. If you fail, the Council will execute you themselves. Zelkoth believed them. He ordered his engineers to push the engines beyond safe limits. The ship shook and groaned under the strain, but it moved faster. In the storage room where the children had barricaded themselves, Jake Peterson was teaching the others how to stay calm. They had been hiding for 6 hours. The Vakreth guards had tried to break in twice, but the children had piled heavy containers against the door. They had food and water from the storage supplies. They could last a while longer. Emma Collins kept the younger children busy by making them tell stories. Sophie Martinez talked about her dog back home. Danny Price described his favorite games. Lucy White remembered her mother's cooking. The stories helped. They reminded everyone why they needed to survive. They had families waiting for them. They had homes to return to. Jake found a small vent in the wall. He managed to pry it open and looked inside. It was a ventilation shaft, narrow but possibly large enough for the smaller children to crawl through. He called Sophie over. Think you can fit in there? Sophie looked at the shaft and nodded. Where does it go? She asked. Jake did not know, but anywhere was better than being trapped in this room. He sent Sophie and 2 other small children into the vent with instructions to find another room and open doors from the inside if they could. It was risky, but they needed options. Sophie crawled into the darkness without complaint. She was scared, but she did not show it. Jake watched her disappear into the shaft and prayed she would be okay. Admiral Henderson stood on the bridge of the Victory and studied the tactical display. The Vakreth ship was on their screens now. It was running hard, pushing its engines to dangerous levels. Henderson's tactical officer reported that the Vakreth vessel might suffer engine failure before they could intercept it. Good, Henderson said. Let them break their ship trying to run. We will still catch them. The human fleet had split into 3 groups. The main battle group, led by Henderson, was pursuing the Vakreth ship directly. A second group had moved to cut off any escape routes. The third group remained in Vakreth space surrounding their worlds. If Zelkoth did not surrender the children, the third group would begin the attack. It was all planned down to the smallest detail. Captain Garcia brought Henderson a report. Intelligence says the children escaped their cell and are hiding somewhere on the Vakreth ship. They staged a breakout 6 hours ago. Henderson felt pride surge through him. Of course they did. They were human children. They did not just wait to be rescued. They fought back. They survived. That was what humans did. On Earth, President Mitchell received updates every hour. The military kept her informed about the fleet's position. The intelligence services told her about the children's escape attempt. She shared the news with the public. People cheered in the streets. Their children were fighters. They were making their ancestors proud. The president allowed herself a small smile before returning to the grim business of preparing for war. General Thraken watched everything from his station. He had observers with both the human fleet and the Vakreth government. His job was to make sure this conflict did not spread to other species. So far, the humans had been precise. They threatened only the Vakreth. They did not demand anything from anyone else. But Thraken knew that could change if things went wrong. He received a message from the Krell ambassador. The ancient species wanted to offer their services as mediators. Thraken appreciated the gesture, but he knew it was pointless. The humans had stated their terms clearly: return the children or face destruction. There was no middle ground. No room for negotiation. The Vakreth either complied or they faced the consequences. Sophie Martinez crawled through the ventilation shaft for what felt like hours. Her knees hurt and her hands were dirty. Behind her, 2 other children followed. They could barely see in the darkness. Sophie used her hands to feel the way forward. The shaft branched and turned. She chose directions randomly, hoping to find something useful. Finally, she saw light ahead. A vent cover looking into a room. Sophie pushed the cover carefully and it fell away. She dropped down into what looked like a control room. Computers and screens covered the walls. Nobody was there. Sophie helped the other 2 children down and they looked around. One of the computers had a map of the ship. Sophie studied it, trying to understand the alien symbols. She found a symbol that looked like their storage room. Then she traced a path from there to what might be the bridge. If they could reach the bridge, maybe they could help the rescue somehow. Sophie memorized the route and climbed back into the vent. They needed to tell Jake what they had found. Commander Zelkoth received a proximity alert. Human ships were closing fast. They would intercept in less than 3 hours. He had tried everything. His ship was running on emergency power. The engines were overheating. His crew was exhausted, and still it was not enough. He could not reach human space before the deadline. He made a decision. He broadcast on all frequencies, including those the humans were monitoring. This is Commander Zelkoth of the Vakreth raiding fleet. I surrender. I will hand over the human children immediately. Please do not attack my ship or my homeworld. I acted without authorization. This is my fault alone. Punish me, not my people. Admiral Henderson received the transmission. His communications officer looked at him expectantly. Do we accept the surrender, sir? Henderson considered. The deadline had not expired yet. The children were still alive according to all reports. He could be merciful, or he could make an example that the galaxy would never forget. He thought about those children hiding on the Vakreth ship. He thought about their parents waiting on New Haven. He thought about every human child who might face danger in the future. The galaxy needed to learn a lesson, but the children needed to come home safely. That was more important than revenge. Surrender accepted, Henderson said. But you will follow our instructions exactly. Reduce speed and prepare to be boarded. If any child is harmed during the boarding process, your surrender will be revoked. Do you understand? Zelkoth's response came quickly. I understand. Please just do not hurt my crew. They were following my orders. Henderson turned to his tactical officer. Send in the Special Forces team, Captain Murphy's unit. Tell them to secure those children and get them out safely. Use non-lethal force on the Vakreth crew unless they resist. We are not here for revenge. We are here for our children. The officer nodded and relayed the orders. In the storage room, Jake heard Sophie return through the vent. She told him about the control room and the map. Jake smiled. Even if rescue came soon, it was good to have options. He gathered all the children together. Help is coming, he said. I can feel it. We just need to hold on a little longer. Stay strong. Stay together. We are going home. The youngest children started to cry, but they were tears of relief. Emma Collins hugged Sophie Martinez tight. Danny Price and Lucy White high-fived. The older children smiled through their own tears. They had survived. They had fought back. And now they were going to see their families again. They just had to wait a little longer. Outside the Vakreth ship, Human assault craft moved into position. Captain Ben Murphy checked his gear one last time. He had done boarding actions before, but never one like this. His orders were clear. Get the children. Keep them safe. Everything else was secondary. Murphy looked at his team. They were all parents themselves. They understood what this mission meant. They would not fail. The boarding began. The galaxy held its breath and watched. In a few minutes, everyone would know if the human children were safe. Everyone would see if humanity kept its word or unleashed its fury. The answer would shape galactic politics for generations to come. Because today, the galaxy learned that some species do not negotiate when their children are threatened. Some species just act.